Hey Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols, and I'm here to bring you your Nichols Worth, a recent video I did on some strange KJV Bibles. Now this time we're going to do a couple of strange NKJV Bibles. Now I want to give a disclaimer real quick. This is a spiritual warfare Bible, and there's a lot of this that I agree with, but there's some contributors that I have some disagreements with. Anytime you dive into spiritual warfare when you're getting to the angelic and demonic, it's going to be a little bit weird. Some of you would probably think my belief system is weird on the supernatural world, so I'm saying this is weird in the sense of it dives into that supernatural context. This one is weird because it's weird. So this is one we're going to start off with. This is the Prophecy Study Edition. Now, when I picked this up, I just thought it was going to be a Bible based on prophecy. I had never heard of Amazing Facts, did not know what they were. But when I opened it up, I noticed a name that I was very familiar with that I had heard before. And that is from the publisher, Douglas Batchelor. And I was like, where have I heard this name before? And it was just ringing a bell, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Once I got into the context of the Bible itself, I was like, this is actually a pretty nice little layout. It's a 2-column, large print. This looks to be about a 12-point font in the NKJV. Not many notes and references, just straight Bible. It has a little bit of notes here and there, but I didn't see any references to speak of. But as I was going through this, I was like, what makes this a Prophecy Study Edition? I do like the red letter. And I've also noticed that whenever the Old Testament was being quoted, they have a little star here. I thought that was kind of neat, but I was like, what makes this a Prophecy Study Edition? And I get to the end of the Bible and it's like, here's a concordance. Okay, I'm not seeing anything here. What makes this thing so special? And then boom. That's when I began to see what made this what it is. And this is actually a product of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So this is going to relay their belief system. So if you want to know the basic belief systems of a Seventh-day Adventist, then this is a good way to figure that out. They are big on end times Bible prophecy. They're going to really be emphatic about that. So let me just take you through a few things. Is there anything left you can trust? So this is about science in the Bible and can we rely on it and how evolution and what do they correlate? Don't they correlate? Of course, they do not believe in the theory of evolution. This is on the nature and the creation of Satan. I actually found this to be pretty beneficial. God did create the devil. Now this I found wild. For those of you that hold a 1,000-year millennial reign point of view, they believe on earth nothing is going to be going on except Satan being in his prison and the earth is going to be desolate. This 1,000-year reign and this, as they say, colossal city is going to be in heaven. So all the believers, everyone is going to be in heaven during this millennial reign of Christ. The millennial reign of Christ is going to take place only in heaven. It's going to have nothing to do with earth. And then this colossal city, like a new Jerusalem, is going to come down from heaven with its inhabitants to take over the earth. So that's a pretty interesting thing. I also thought this section was really solid. Some keys to a happy marriage. Good advice. Just really thought this was sound. And then we got the written in stone. This is where they're talking about the 10 Commandments and how we're supposed to obey the Sabbath and how the Sabbath is on Saturday. And then that's when they move into the lost day in history and how the Catholic Church, they have a very ill view of the Catholic Church, changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, which I don't actually believe that's what happened. They deal with some deliverance and different topics, but ultimately they believe the mark of the beast is going to be in Daniel when he changes the times and seasons. This Antichrist is going to change the times and seasons based on that prophecy in Daniel. And in that time, he is going to change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday by law. And then anyone who keeps this quote-unquote Sabbath on Sunday has taken the mark of the beast and become the apostate church. There are all kinds of wild beliefs with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I wouldn't classify them as a quote-unquote cult because they seem to have an orthodox view on salvation, on the Trinity, but they definitely have some strange end times views and some strange views on the supernatural world. Now let's dive into this guy, the Spiritual Warfare Bible. And the reason I decided to go ahead and give you a look at this is because this is coming back out in the MEV. This is going to be re-released in the updated MEV. One thing about this that makes it strange to me is its contributors. So I'm going to take you to the list of contributors. The first one off the bat, John Eckerd. He claims to be an apostle. Now, I'm a believer in the fivefold ministry. I believe there are apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers today. I don't believe we have a threefold church. But I do not believe that if apostles have the same authority as the original apostles of Christ, they are more ambassadors, they are more church planters, and things like that. But John Eckert actually believes in what is called prophetic activations. And this is where everyone is a prophet, you just need to activate it. And he has these activation sessions where he'll have these groups of people prophesy over each other using random objects. They'll pull a coin out of their pocket, or they'll pull a watch out of their pocket, or they'll pull keys out of their pocket and say, you have the keys to the kingdom. I personally think that's a little bit of a strange way to deal with the prophetic. So that automatically gives me pause toward this book. Now I'm going to read off some of the other contributors, because there's some interesting people. Francis Frangipane, Jenison Franklin. If you know who Jenison Franklin is, he started off as a youth pastor, became a pastor. I've always found him to be fairly solid, but he does tend to overemphasize the spirit world, spirit of Python, etc., etc. Ron Phillips. Ron Phillips is a pastor, or at least he was, at Abba House in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And he seems to believe that Christians can have demons inside of them. They can't necessarily be demon possessed, where demons have full control, but they can be demonized, which I wouldn't hold to that point of view. There's also some contributions in here from John Bevere and several others, but then Bill Weiss. This is one, he wrote a book called 23 Minutes in Hell, where he claims to have a vision in hell, and he saw hell and smelled hell. And whenever you get into stuff like that, I'm going to categorize that as a little bit strange. Now, I'm not here to say this is a heretical Bible. I don't believe that. But I do believe there are some things in here that definitely are a bit odd. So let me just show you a few spots. Number one, prayer against the spirit of Cain. In hyper-charismatic circles, one thing you're going to see is this emphasis on spirit of, spirit of, spirit of. And I don't know that there is a spirit of Cain that's in operation today, a spirit of murder. That seems a little bit of a stretch to me. And this kind of gives you an idea of where this thing is headed. Also, angel allies. This Ron Phillips guy seems to indicate that we can kind of summon angels, and that to me is just a little odd. The Bible says he will give his angels charge over you. I have no doubt that when we speak and when we talk, it does something in the supernatural world. But to say that we can summon them, I find that a little odd. The Passover prayer of deliverance. The reason I marked this one is because it has that I decree and declare, and that just sits a little weird with me. I understand what they're saying. We have authority in Jesus, y'all. That's a thing. But when you begin to decree and declare, it might just be a little bit out of our jurisdiction. I believe we need to let God do that. But I'm not super hung up over this. Somebody says I decree and declare in a prayer, I'm not going to label them as a nutcase, but it's a little bit troubling to me. And then plugging into the supernatural source. This is an article by John Eckert. Just wanted to point that out because he has that prophetic activation point of view. Then as we move into a couple other areas, the laying on of hands, this seems to indicate that there's a transference, and I believe that to a degree. It's just, here's what I think of this Bible. I think this Bible has a lot of good stuff in it, but it's just a little bit extreme in a couple areas. So now let's dive forward and move to this. And the paper in this is really thin. The Leviathan spirit. Now I'm actually going to read this because this is from John Eckert. It says, Leviathan is king over all the children of pride. The Leviathan spirit, represented by a crocodile on a large sea serpent, attacks leaders, causing them to become arrogant and puffed up. We are aware that God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble, and that humility is a prerequisite for accessing the grace of God. The most extensive reference, and then he lists the references, and he says, Leviathan spirit includes prayerlessness, harsh words, covenant breaking, inability to serve others, no breath, stubbornness, hardness of heart, pride, opens the door for destruction. I just feel like this is a stretch. It's like, where are you getting this from? And it's extrapolating some things from the text that this is just not a good hermeneutic right here. That's eisegesis at best, not exegesis. So that's a little troubling. But again, I think this is actually a useful Bible, especially for those who have an interest in the spiritual world and spiritual warfare. But I just want you to know what you're getting into. The Ministry of Deliverance. This is an article by John Eckert. It seems all of these guys believe that Christians can have demons living inside of them. They just can't be fully possessed. And their reasoning behind this is they say that man is spirit, soul, and body. And when you get saved, only your spirit is redeemed. Your soul and your body are being redeemed. So that means that your soul and your body can still be inhabited by demons. It means your soul and your body can still be inhabited by demons while your spirit man is renewed. I've even heard some, like Derek Prince, say that a Christian can't be delivered of demons living inside of them while they're speaking in tongues, because tongues creates a barrier where demons can't come in or out. Some of this stuff is just wacky. I'm not saying these guys hold that point of view. That's just one that I've heard with Derek Prince. Identification of an apostle. This is another article by John Eckerd, and he just seems to not separate the apostles of Christ, the original 12, from apostles today. And to me, that's a little bit alarming. I don't know his full position on this, but just this little snippet, it just leaves too much room for interpretation that makes me uncomfortable. Now, I actually like this, and that's symptoms of demonic operation. I'm actually going to read the symptoms. I thought this was good. Incapacity for normal living. Extreme behavior, personality changes, so some of these could be full-on possession, restlessness and insomnia, inner anguish, self-inflicted injury and suicide, unexplainable illnesses, addictive behavior, abnormal sexual behavior, defeat, failure, and depression in the Christian life, occult involvement and behavior, speech difficulties, doctrinal error, and religious legalism. Now, I'm obviously not going to agree with all of those, but I do believe that when someone has demonic activity in their lives, it can definitely create some of these symptoms. And I do believe that evil forces can afflict Christians. I just don't believe they can live inside of them. So now let's take a look at some other things here. We have angels are watching, and this is another one of those things from Ron Phillips that indicates that we can kind of summon angels, and it just totally weirds me out. Then we get to the 12 root strongholds, and this is when we get into that whole spirit of thing that I just don't like. Spirit of infirmity, spirit of fear, spirit of Python, which is mentioned in Acts chapter 16 when it says that the woman was given to a spirit of divination. That is literally the spirit of Python. Spirit of pride and enslaving spirit, spirit of perversion, spirit of antichrist, spirit of depression, and they just make all of these things demons. And sometimes when we talk about a spirit of, I think we're talking about a human spirit that has these tendencies, not necessarily always a demon. Everything isn't a demon, y'all. And then we have the army of hell. I thought this was really good because it breaks down the 4 levels of the army of hell: principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. They label them all as demons. I wouldn't do that, but that's a theological topic for a totally different video. And then finally, once we get to the end here, this is when you get into your appendix and your articles on spiritual warfare, end-time misconceptions on spiritual warfare. All of this is going to be very heavy on angels and demons. 37 biblical curses. So these are curses mentioned in the Bible and their associated references. I thought that was nice. And then it gives you this grouping of evil spirits and abandonment, addictions, anger, and then it goes into confusion and it lists ADD, ADHD, OCD as evil spirits. Now, I know by reading some of the articles in here, they don't believe that this is evil spirits all the time, but that's not made clear. So to me, that's a little bit out of balance. It's just, and this is multiple contributors, so you're going to be kind of all over the place with all of this. But once we get into that, you have biblical proof that a believer should enlist in spiritual warfare, which I absolutely agree. And then freedom principles for daily use, how to remain free once you get free. I think this is all important stuff. Then you get into your course. So look, I do label this as a weird NKJV, but I also label it as useful. There's a lot of good, useful information here on deliverance, on spiritual warfare. Folks, we live in a world with a spiritual reality where there are good guys and bad guys. And we need to recognize when evil forces are at work in our lives so we know what to do. I do not believe a Christian can be demon possessed. I personally do not believe a Christian can have a demon living inside of them. But Christians can definitely be afflicted by evil forces, and we need to know how to handle that. God bless you. Keep calm. Jesus on. This is your Nichols Worth.